Today we'll be discussing exam stress. It goes without saying that studying for exams can be extremely stressful, so it's really important for you to learn what causes exam stress, what may be maintaining it, and how to beat it. So, this presentation will walk you through a little bit more information about exam stress, its causes, things that we may be doing to keep it going without realizing, plus a little bit more information about how to cope with this exam stress and some amazing resources to help you beat the stress before it gets worse. So, let's first think about defining stress. What is stress? Simply put, stress is your mind and body's response to an event or change that it perceives to be a threat. So these threats, events, or changes are all known as stressors. Essentially, a stressor is anything that causes the release of stress hormones in your body. You might have felt this when you're going down a roller coaster really quickly. The uncomfortable butterfly feeling in your stomach prepares you to either take on the roller coaster head on or run away. We've heard so much about stress, but how exactly does it link to the feelings of anxiety that you might also feel at this time? Well, anxiety is the feeling of worry, apprehension, or dread that something bad is going to happen, or that you can't cope with a situation. Anxiety can happen in response to a specific situation, but it sometimes continues after the situation has passed. You might feel butterflies in the stomach, tension, shakiness, or nausea, but regardless, it's really important to note that anxiety is a very common and natural part of life. Everyone feels anxious sometimes, but sometimes it might feel a bit too much, and that's where we learn to cope with it. Exam stress is also extremely common. 82% of teachers say that tests and exams have the biggest impact on their pupils' mental health. And over 75% of students have experienced stress or anxiety over exam changes in the past year. So although stress and anxiety might feel a little bit isolating, you're not alone in how you feel. Let's have a think about what might be causing your exam stress. So, to understand this further, let's introduce Jen. So, Jen is in year 11, her exams are approaching, and she's beginning to feel stressed and anxious because she's finding it really hard to understand what she's studying. She feels very unprepared, and she feels like she needs to learn and remember a whole lot of information at once. Jen feels tense and shaky when she thinks about her exams. She avoids studying and avoids meeting up with friends. Instead, Jen just stays in her room and scrolls through TikTok and Instagram the whole evening. One reason why Jen is experiencing this level of stress is because she may be caught in a cycle. Her thoughts are, I won't do well, I'm failing this test, I feel so unprepared. So then she feels low and overwhelmed, she feels tense and shaky, and she gets headaches. And this leads to behaviors such as avoiding friends, staying in bed, and avoiding studying overall. This begins a vicious cycle of stress and anxiety, where Jen's negative thoughts lead to negative feelings, and so she develops unhelpful behaviors to help her to cope with these thoughts and feelings. It becomes a pattern, and the best way to break the loop is by finding healthier ways to cope with these horrible thoughts and feelings that we may experience whilst preparing for exams. Another way to understand this is through what scientists call the imbalance model of stress. When it's time to start revising for exams, without realizing, we weigh up two things. First is the demand, which is the exam, and second is our ability, so our ability to do well in these exams. The best case scenario is that even though the mental demands of an exam is very high, we know that we have the ability to overcome them. For example, you're preparing for your maths exam and it might feel extremely daunting and draining, and you might feel a bit worried about the amount of effort that you need to put in order to succeed. But you know that you've mastered your multiplication and division skills very recently, so you're sure that you have the ability to do very well. Therefore, you avoid stressing about it, and studying for exams becomes less terrifying and stressful to you. On the other hand, sometimes the demand of exams is just too high. Sometimes Jen worries about how much time she has left, how many facts she needs to remember, and whether her friends or peers are doing more than her. At this point, she started to doubt her abilities and feels unable to cope with the process, so she tips that scale, and this leads to a buildup of stress which can make us feel agitated, frustrated, and moody. So let's now think about what we might be doing to keep this horrible feeling of stress and anxiety going. I'm sure you can relate to how Jen's thoughts create a vicious cycle that increases her levels of exam stress. But what ways of thinking help us to stay stuck in this cycle? Over the course of our lives, we develop what's called unhelpful thinking styles. And these are overly negative patterns of thinking. They're really unrealistic perspectives of the world and also yourself, and they can become very automatic responses to life events such as exams. So the problem arises when we automatically think in these unhelpful patterns that lead to negative feelings and behaviors. These negative thinking patterns can become a part of us and may lead to unwanted negative emotions such as anxiety or low mood. As you can see in the speech bubble, Jen misses her tuition session and automatically labels herself as an idiot, therefore keeping this pattern of stressful thinking going. Jen also engages in predictive thinking. This is where we make negative predictions about what's going to happen in the future. So many young people take on this thinking style, and it's a very common cause of stress and anxiety. A good example is shown on the slide. You might begin to think, I'm going to get into the exam and forget everything I know, my mind's going to go blank and I won't be able to complete the exam. But in reality, we can't actually predict what's going to happen in the future, and so this causes unnecessary worry and increases our levels of stress. One more thing that may be maintaining Jen's exam stress is her avoidance of studying and friends. So avoidance helps us to cope with the anxiety that exams bring. In the short term, this decreases stress and anxiety because you have not put yourself in a distressing situation. However, by doing this, you may be making the anxiety worse in the long term. There's even research to suggest that you may become more and more afraid of the situation, which may keep the cycle of anxiety and stress going. Okay, so now let's work on beating Jen's exam stress. There are so many ways that we can cope with exam stress, but today we're going to discuss 4 scientifically proven methods that we can use to reduce and cope with exam stress. One way of coping with exam stress is thought challenging. And thought challenging is about challenging unhelpful thoughts that may occur whilst preparing for exams. It's a really empowering method that everyone should master in order to improve their mental well-being, and it's a great way to fight back against thoughts that may make you feel low or worried by stopping them in their tracks. When negative thoughts appear, take a second to ask yourself, is it helpful for me to think this way? Am I jumping to conclusions? And what would I tell a friend if they had thoughts similar to this? Relaxation is our next tip. It helps to direct your mind away from your current worries and helps you to stay in the moment. 2 ways of doing this is through rest or mindfulness. Having a regular sleep routine helps to calm and restore the body. It helps to improve concentration and regulate mood. Mindfulness and meditation is about taking the time to be completely present in the moment without judgment of yourself or others. You can practice meditation by taking a 5-minute walk and being completely aware of your surroundings, noticing the trees, the snow, the clouds, the sounds, and the smells. It helps to slow the mind down so you can continue studying in a calm state. Our next key tip is exercise. Stress slows down the brain's ability to process information and makes it really hard for us to concentrate and focus, which then can impact your exam performance. A 20-minute exercise session can change your mental state and physical state, especially if you've been sitting in a library or at your desk the entire day. Especially because exercise releases a chemical in our body called endorphins, and this helps to improve memory. Some examples of exercises are simply walking the dog, playing football, swimming, and jogging, but it could also just include running up and down the stairs a few times a day or stretching at your desk. Our 4th tip is slowly overcoming your fears. We've talked so much about avoiding avoidance, so overcoming your fears involves repeatedly facing a situation that causes you stress or anxiety. So many young people have fears of sitting down and revising because they're scared that these unhelpful thinking styles will flood back to them and make them feel really tense and anxious. So, to overcome this, you could create a revision timetable with specific time periods to study. So this is blocking out small pieces of time to avoid a build-up of stress and anxiety while still getting some studying done. You could also complete mini tests or mock tests to slowly expose yourself to making mistakes and learning from them. Overall, it's really important to avoid falling into patterns that might keep this cycle of stress and anxiety going. Slowly exposing yourself to doing more exam-related things can help to minimize the fears that comes with preparing for exams. It's really important to make sure that we're taking care of our mental well-being even after exams have finished. So this would be a great opportunity to make use of all of the apps and social media resources available. The Headspace app is a great way to cope with the stresses of exams at home or on the go. It's free to use its basic features and has programs for managing and coping with stress, anxiety, and low mood. YouTube also has some brilliant videos that can help you to learn more about your exam stress and how to cope with it. Studying for exams is really not easy, so it's important to think about who we can rely on when things get a bit too difficult to handle. So we refer to this as our backup team. It's important to think about who is going to be on your backup team to provide help and support in different forms, such as motivational support, practical support, or comfort, or even companionship. Have a think about the people around you. This could be friends, family, or people at school or work or clubs that you attend. Consider opening up with those that you feel comfortable about your struggles and worries, and who knows, they might even share the same anxieties about the situations that they may be going through too. If you feel that things are getting a bit too difficult for you to handle on your own, let's work on them together. The Sussex CWP team aims to help young people that are experiencing mild to moderate anxiety and feelings of low mood every day. So speak to your caregiver, GP, or school to make a referral using the usual Suffolk CAMHS referral form. So hopefully you've learned how to beat your exam stress by making small adjustments to your thoughts and behaviors. Thanks and have an amazing week.